Most men die twice. Once when the body gives out, and again when the last person who remembers them stops speaking their name. The second death arrives faster for almost everyone. The ones this concerns do not receive the second death. Their names become architecture, load-bearing words in how civilization understands what is possible. History does not move in currents. It moves in detonations. Decades of stagnation. Then one man decides something, and everything reorganizes around that decision. Historians arrive afterward and construct a narrative of inevitability around what was actually a single, conscious, aggressive act of will. They call it timing. They call it circumstance. The man himself would call it a long-held intention, finally meeting its moment. The question is not who that man is. The question is what structure of thinking produces him. Destiny without architecture is delusion. Every would-be great man who failed had the feeling, the burning sense that they were meant for something disproportionate to their station. That feeling is nearly universal in men who think at all. What separated the ones who moved history from the ones who merely felt like they should have was a philosophical framework so internally consistent it could absorb contradiction. Setback and the sustained contempt of the world without structural collapse. Not optimism, not resilience. A fortress of logic around a fixed internal objective that no external pressure could breach. Caesar was not confident because things were going well. He was confident because his map of reality was more accurate than his enemy's map, and he knew it. He spent years building that accuracy in obscurity, studying, losing, being captured by pirates, paying the ransom with pleasantries, then hunting them down and executing every one after he was free. That was not temperament. That was a man testing his philosophical architecture in real conditions. Does it hold under pressure? Does it produce results when deployed against actual resistance? He updated where the logic failed and continued moving toward an internally fixed point. The internally fixed point is the thing, not the goal in the conventional sense, not the title or the territory or the achievement. The internally fixed point is a specific quality of reality the man intends to bring into existence. Abstract enough to survive the destruction of any particular plan, concrete enough to serve as judgment criterion for every decision. Men who operate without it are reactionary. They respond to the world as it presents itself, treating each event as a new problem rather than as material for the objective. Men who operate with it are structurally different. Every event, defeat, windfall, betrayal, becomes input. How does a man arrive at the internally fixed point? Some are born into proximity to it. Some read their way into it. But the most dangerous category, historically the most disruptive, are the men who arrive at it through a violent internal rupture in the middle of an apparently ordinary life. The man who realizes his destiny at 38 is more dangerous than the man who knew at 18. Because the older man has information the younger man lacks. He has watched enough cycles complete to understand where leverage actually lives, not where it appears to live. When he commits without the waste of a man who has never been truly broken. Here is the structural paradox at the center of this observation. Men who looked destined from the beginning often end up decorative. They peak early because early success calcifies the thinking that produced it. They stop updating the map because the map seemed to work, and the ego fills in the rest. Meanwhile, the apparent failures are still updating. They have no choice. Nothing is working, so everything stays in question. A system that must update to survive becomes adaptive. A system that succeeds too early becomes brittle. This is not philosophical abstraction. It is a mechanical property of how thinking responds to sustained pressure versus sustained reward. The man who decides, at whatever age, that he is going to move in the direction of something historically significant begins with friction elimination, not optimization. Friction elimination is structurally different. Optimization assumes the current path is correct and asks how to move faster on it. Friction elimination questions whether the path exists for a reason that still applies, and removes everything that does not serve the fixed point. Most of what men call discipline is actually friction that survived because no one questioned it. The man who would reshape something, a market, an institution, a civilization, maps every activity against one question. Does this apply pressure toward the fixed point, or does it not? The ones that do not are eliminated, delegated, or engineered out of the system entirely. The result, from the outside, looks like obsession. From the inside, it is simply a life where the direction of force has been unified. A man with one thing is more dangerous than a man with 10. Not because focus is virtuous, but because compounding only works in one direction. Compounding is the most misunderstood concept in strategy. Everyone understands financial compounding. Almost no one applies its mechanics to influence, reputation, and institutional power. A man who compounds correctly is not adding resources. He is multiplying the productivity of every prior resource with each new one. The knowledge from one domain applied to another does not add. It restructures the second domain entirely. And the restructuring creates a new surface for the next idea to land on. This is why the great man uses every idea, not intellectual voraciousness. He understands that every idea is a tool. Tools exist to apply force, and force applied at the right point changes the structure of everything downstream of it. Systems thinking is the discipline of finding where force changes structure rather than merely moves mass. The man who does not think in systems applies force and gets proportional results. The man who does is not asking what will this do, he is asking what will the changed system then do on its own. This separates the historically significant from the merely successful. Success can be achieved by grinding against resistant systems. Historical significance requires changing systems so they grind for you. The man who operates this way is not popular in the early phases. Popularity requires giving people what they already want. The man with a fixed objective gives people what the objective requires, which is sometimes what they want and often not. He builds alliances of interest, not alliances of affection. Interest alliances are more durable. A man who is allied because he wants the same outcome stays through difficulty. A man who is allied because he likes someone leaves when the cost gets high enough. The great man manages this by being ruthlessly clear about the exchange. Not cruel clear. He knows what he offers and what he expects in return, and structures each relationship so both parties benefit from the objective advancing. Manipulation obscures the exchange. This is the opposite, making the exchange so visible and so obviously beneficial that resistance dissolves before it organizes. There is a category of resistance that does not dissolve. Structural resistance, people and systems, whose existence depends on the current order remaining unchanged. The great man does not fight structural resistance directly. Direct conflict with it is expansive and often terminal. He roots around it, makes it irrelevant, or transforms the incentive structure so that the resistant parties become participants. Napoleon did not defeat European aristocracy by arguing with it. He offered it a deal: participate in the new structure, or be consumed by it. Most participated. The ones who didn't were destroyed not by Napoleon personally, but by the logic of the system he had built, which now moved against them automatically. Automatic systems are the end point. The man who must apply manual pressure to every outcome is limited by his biology. The man who designs systems that apply pressure automatically has multiplied himself beyond those limits. Building structures, social, institutional, procedural, that continue doing work after the initial construction is the deepest lever available. Most men misuse enemies entirely. An enemy who is visible and consistent is a resource. He defines the boundary of the territory, forces clarity about what is worth defending, and gives the political environment a structure it would otherwise lack. The great man often cultivates the right enemy the same way he cultivates the right ally deliberately, with full understanding of what role that opposition plays in the overall system. An enemy who attacks from the wrong angle legitimizes the man attacked to every audience that finds that angle repellent. The attack does work that did not need to be done personally. The open question this raises: if enemies are cultivatable and alliances are structural rather than personal. What distinguishes the great man's relationships from pure calculation? They are not distinguished. The calculation is the relationship. Sentiment is noise in a system designed for scale. The great man is rarely the most powerful person in a room in terms of declared resources. He is almost always the most informed. Information asymmetry compounds. Each piece of intelligence reduces the cost of the next decision, which frees resources for intelligence gathering, which reduces cost again. Most men are information poor, not because intelligence is scarce, but because they build no systems to collect and process it. They react to what surfaces, rather than hunting what is buried. The great man builds intelligence infrastructure before he needs it, understanding that the moment he needs it is already too late to build it. He is particularly interested in the gap between what people say and what they do, and between what institutions claim to optimize for and what they actually optimize for. Those gaps are where every real opportunity in any system lives, undiscovered and uncontested. Institutions are the accumulated decisions of men who came before. They contain leverage no single man could generate from scratch and resistance no single man can overcome directly. The great man's relationship with institutions is never confrontational at the beginning. It is infiltrative. He finds the institution's existing momentum and positions his objective downstream of it, so the institution's natural movement carries him forward. Only after he is load-bearing within it does he begin redirecting its momentum. By that point, removing him would require the institution to stop a cost it will rarely pay. The question that will not resolve here: at what point does this capacity emerge? Is it teachable, or only realizable by a certain type of consciousness under specific conditions of pressure? The Stoics spent 5 centuries developing curriculum for exactly this kind of thinking and produced Marcus Aurelius, arguably the most powerful man in the world for 20 years, who used his power with a precision that still resists adequate explanation. The curriculum existed. Others went through it and became competent philosophers. One man went through it and ran an empire from inside a fortress. Mentality so complete that nothing penetrated it: plague, war, the behavior of his own son. The curriculum did not produce Marcus Bonthane. In Marcus used the curriculum as material for something that was already trying to fall. This is the mechanic. The great man does not learn in order to know. He learns in order to arm the fixed point. Every book, every conversation, every failure, every conflict is a weapons delivery. The point is already there. The learning builds the armory. Knowledge without a fixed point is education. Knowledge with a fixed point is strategy. After that distinction clarifies, and there is always a moment of clarification, not a gradual drift, everything changes in structure. The man begins selecting environments, not for comfort or conventional advancement, but for the quality of friction they provide against the objective. He goes where the resistance between his intention and current reality is highest, because that friction is the diagnostic. It reveals the gap between the map and the territory. Avoiding it keeps the map apparently accurate. Moving toward it continuously corrects the map, continuously updates the method, continuously closes the gap between intention and result. Seek friction with the objective, not friction generally. Random difficulty is noise. Targeted friction, the specific resistance standing between the fixed point and its realization, is the sharpest refinement tool available. This is the mechanism that separates productive suffering from mere suffering, and it is the one the great man never stops applying to himself. There is a final, structural property that governs all of this. The great man's relationship with time is architecturally different from the ordinary man's. The ordinary man experiences time as pressure, days accumulating against him, urgency without direction. The man with a fixed objective and a system for advancing it experiences time as material. Each day is a unit of construction. The urgency is directional. Pressure forges rather than destroys. Men who have been broken and rebuilt understand this. Physically, before the breaking, Time is atmospheric. After, it becomes structural. Every day is used like a tool, rather than endured like weather. The history books compress out the quality of the daily architecture entirely. They write about battles, speeches, pivotal decisions. They skip the decade of building a thinking system so precise that when the decisive moment came, the decision was not a decision at all. It was a conclusion the system had already reached, waiting for the moment to execute. The great man does not rise to the occasion. He was already there. The occasion made the fact visible, and the irony that hangs over all of it, the one history cannot answer, but keeps posing. The man who builds this structure cannot know, in the years of construction, whether he is building the real thing or a cathedral to his own delusion. Both feel identical from the inside. Both require the same architecture. Both demand the same cost. The deluded man and the man who will change history run the same internal program for years before the results diverge. The difference only becomes visible at the end, which means the work has to be done under permanent uncertainty. And the permanence of that uncertainty is itself the final test of whether the fixed point is real, or whether the man is simply the most disciplined kind of fool, which until the last chapter are indistinguishable.